Hey, welcome everybody to another session of the Fall Forum brought to you by Tidely. My name's Phil Marshon. I am the host. I'm also going to be speaking at the Modern Church Leader Conference coming up here very soon. And you see my branding there. That's the last time you'll see it. But this is an event brought to you for the Modern Church Leader. And I am here with my friend, Dustin Stout. He is the founder of Magai.co. He's also a former youth pastor and a former comedian, which means he used to be funny. Welcome to the show, Dustin. Glad to have you here.
Thanks, Phil. Yeah, I used to be funny. Now I just have AI do it for me. So
some of those AI jokes are pretty funny, and some of them are quite lame. So they tell worse dad jokes than you and me. So, all right, well, let's dig into this conversation here today, Dustin. This is all about AI and the church. And probably we should get the elephant out of the room right up front, because I know people have concerns about AI, and particularly I know pastors who've been fired for plagiarism. You probably do too. So some people are probably worried about, data security and how do I make sure copyrights are being protected and all that stuff. So while that's a negative place to start, I think we got to start there so that we can clear the space for what's possible. So why don't you talk about that for just a moment, and then we'll dig into what's possible for churches.
Yeah, I think most importantly, we have to realize that AI is not here to replace us. It's here to assist us. And so I'll be speaking in Dallas next week at a big conference to a bunch of church communicators. And my big topic, the big focus of the topic rather, is how AI is an assistive technology, not a replacement technology. We should not substitute our own ability to be critical about our work. We should not substitute our own creativity. We should not replace rather our creativity or our critical thinking. It should be an assistive measure, a sidekick to our creativity and to our critical thinking. So everything that the AI you use comes up with, you should think critically about, because AI does have the tendency to make stuff up, or hallucinate is the technical term, and it can get things wrong. So, always be critical, always be intentional that you are bringing your unique perspective, your unique skills to the table, and AI is there to assist you in that. And always proofread and fact check the two basic skills that you need to have to really get the most out of AI. And I think it goes without saying that AI is not inspired by the Holy Spirit. I don't believe that the Holy Spirit can indwell an AI model. And so if you're a pastor, you're a teacher, always remember you're going to be held to a higher standard. That's what the Bible tells us, that teachers are going to be more critically judged. And so it's your responsibility. If you're coming up with training content, teaching content, I believe AI can be very helpful in coming up with that teaching and training content, but it should be you, led by the Spirit in doing so, and being guided by the hand of God to produce that content alongside the AI as your assistant. So regarding privacy, copyrighted material, proprietary sort of information, it is a huge concern. It's a big concern. And so one of the things that I always encourage people to do is, no matter what AI app you're using, make sure you're familiar with their content retention policy and their privacy policies. A lot of times we just kind of skip over this stuff because we're like, yeah, whatever, I'm going to use it anyways. But really take the time to understand, how are these companies holding and storing your information, who has access to it, and is the company going to use your information for training their future models. Now, most AI companies have an option. You have to manually go in and find this option to opt out of training data, which means you are saying, no, do not use any of my conversations, any of the information I upload to train your AI models. If you don't uncheck that box or turn that setting off, they will be using everything that you put in there to train their future models. Now, some companies like Magai, that's by default. Everything is private by default. Nothing is retained. Nothing is used for training. But for ChatGPT in particular, you do have to manually turn that off unless you have an enterprise plan. I think maybe the enterprise plans might have it off by default. I'm not 100% certain on that. But do find those policies and do find those settings to make sure that you're Your private data is staying private.
And that brings up a point that I think all of us can benefit from your insight. When I upload, I wrote a book, so I've got a PDF of it, and I upload it into AI because I want to train AI to think like me and to know what I know when I'm writing future things and prompting it. How do I make sure that it's just contained within my account with AI, whichever platform, Claude, ChatGPT, Magi, versus being shared out to the internet? Is what you just talked about the protective thing, or does it forget it if I uncheck that box that they can use it for training purposes?
Yeah. So in ChatGPT in particular, one big caution is if you're going to, excuse me, if you're going to use it to create a custom GPT, something a lot of people are doing, I think is a great idea for many people. If you're going to upload documents to those GPTs, always make sure that you're not making those GPTs public, because despite many people's efforts, it is fairly easy to, if there's a public GPT out there that you use, if you have enough prompting savvy, you can get all the proprietary information that's been fed right out of the model, even if the owners of that GPT don't want you to. So I do not share these GPTs publicly if you don't want people getting at the information that those GPTs contain. With that said, as long as it's private and as long as you have unchecked the box of like sharing your information for training purposes, if you've opted out of that, if it's not public, then by all means, it should stay private to you. It should be fairly safe. Of course, we don't have the ability to go in and audit these companies and say, show me where my data is and where it's not. It's very impossible to do, but you kind of have to trust these companies to do the right thing. Now, Magi in particular, again, we are opted out of any training, any sharing of content with models. The only time a model gets its hands on the information you provide us is when you explicitly say, process this prompt or process this conversation. Now, whether or not the model remembers it, say on a ChatGPT, when you upload something, if you're uploading it as like a knowledge base for a GPT, it is stored. So therefore, it's always going to be remembered, even if the conversation that you're having goes outside the scope of the model's memory. If it's stored as knowledge that the AI can access, then it's always going to be stored there for that model to access, but should be private if you've kept it private.
Now, some of you listening might think this is Greek that he's talking about if you don't know what he means with custom GPTs and all that. Are there some helpful resources for those who are just getting started? Because I think this is hard to explain just in a conversation, but where would you point people to kind of get an overview of how to do a custom GPT? Because that's probably like one of the most powerful things you can do.
It's funny. I just taught on this this morning.
Okay.
I did this is the exact topic of GPTs and custom personas. So essentially what a GPT or a persona is, it's what we refer to it in Magi. It's essentially taking the AI and giving it a set of underlying instructions that it has to follow about how it should behave, what sort of personality it should have, how it should respond to you. So you're sort of, this is not the technically right term, but it's the one that makes sense to people. You're training the AI to act in a certain way that fits your end goal. So for the easiest example is if you want the AI to write like you, which it will not by default, you have to give it a level of instruction to tell it how to write like you, right? You give it some examples, you give it a brand voice guideline, so to speak, and you can then create, in ChatGPT, they call these GPTs. You can create a custom GPT that will train it or teach it or tell it, prompt it, if you will, how to speak the way that you want it to speak. Likewise in Magi, you can give it these instructions. So a persona or a GPT or a custom GPT, it's just a way of saying we're taking this generalized AI and we're refining it a little bit. We're narrowing its focus, or we're instructing it how to behave in a way that serves us better.
Yeah, I did something like this. I took my book. I also took a couple of articles that I wrote that were really helpful. And I said, I want you to analyze these and tell me what is my voice. And then I got it to describe it. Like, how would you describe my brand voice based on what you're reading here? Then I took those instructions and I've stored them. in Magi for one. And so now it knows how to write like me as a copywriter, because I went through this exercise of several different iterations till it got it right. And now I've got it and I can take it wherever I need to. So I think if you're a pastor, for example, and you wanted to take your sermon, this is, we're going to get into use cases here, but this is one that I think is really super powerful for pastors. You've written your sermon, you've given it. Now you can get AI or some other tool to transcribe it for you. There's a lot of ways to do that. Take that transcription and give it to AI and say, in my voice, I want you to write a summary of my sermon so I can put it on my YouTube video. I can put it in the podcast. I can create a blog post with it, and then we can cut it up into social media posts. You could probably take this further, Dustin, but I feel like if you had that GPT set up, that's going to make sure you retain the voice and enable you to create that. How would you elaborate on that?
Yeah. And again, it's funny we're talking about this because I just taught about this subject. So creating a GPT or a persona that adopts your brand voice, you've instructed it how to speak in your voice, that really opens up the door to do all kinds of things and make your job easier. Because the biggest problem people ultimately run into when they first try using ChatGPT to say, write a social media post or, write a summary of something is it sounds nothing like them. So the most obvious use case for a GPT or a persona is write like me whenever you write something. And so it's really powerful and helps you do all kinds of things, but it can also help you do other things. So in Magi, we have a set of custom personas that we've already made, things like expert copywriter or Bible scholar or marketing expert or social media manager. Personalities that you can apply to the AI that are engineered for very specific tasks. And when you do that, the idea is instead of having the AI sit as a generalist. I mean, we all kind of understand this concept, right? So if you go to a general practitioner doctor and you have a problem with your shoulder, like something's wrong with your shoulder, it's making this weird popping sound, it hurts every time. That general practitioner is going to say, we need to send you to a specialist because I can tell you so much, but we need a specialist to look at this. That's what you're doing with these GPTs. You're turning the AI from a generalist to a specialist to accomplish a specific task. And the outcomes from that are 10, if not 100 times better. And so that's really a powerful thing to do. If you can create a custom GPT for a specific job, a specific voice, I mean, the world really becomes a whole different place in terms of what you can accomplish with AI and how much faster you can accomplish it.
So give us an example with Bible scholar as a persona, because every pastor, Bible study leader, Sunday school teacher is looking for how can I get faster to the passages, the stories, the insights, so that then with the Holy Spirit's help or inspiration, not just help, inspiration, I can develop something that's really going to serve the people in my congregation. Talk us through how that particular avatar is going to be helpful to us. What did you put in it? What do you expect to come out of it? And where do we shouldn't we trust it? Like, where do we need to, how far should we trust it?
Is it okay if I share my screen? I can just show
go for it. Yeah, that'd be easy.
So,
go for it.
Let me go to my personas here inside of Magi. Now, again, I use Magi as a demonstration just because it's what I use, but you can apply these concepts to any AI platform out there, ChatGPT, Claude, Poe, any of the ones out there. I'm going to search for my Bible scholar, and I'll show you exactly how I crafted this. Now, the purpose of this, especially in the context of a church, is your church might have specific denominational things that are a priority to you, certain theological beliefs that you hold true and that sort of drive everything. So instead of having an AI model help you in a general sense, you never know what theology it's going to kind of borrow from, right, in its generation. So by narrowing the focus, telling the AI, this is what we believe, or this is who you should be, and this is the bounds of which we want to operate in, you're going to get much better results. And so this one is pretty generalized, but it does say you are a Christian Bible scholar. You have vast knowledge of the Holy Bible and help the user identify key Bible references, make practical analogies about the text, and come up with helpful illustrations to bring biblical lessons into a modern context. Now, this is, again, very generalized, but you can put things in here like, you are you are a Calvinist Bible teacher, or you're a Arminian Bible teacher, or you are, Baptist preacher, Pentecostal, insert your denomination or your theological framework, if you will, here, and it will help guide the AI to come up with those ideas or those edits, whatever it is you're coming up with. It'll be much more close to what it is you intend for it to come out with. You're leaving no ambiguity on the table. You're making sure it comes up with the right thing for your purpose.
Can I ask you a question? If
Sure.
I were to modify that and say some of the people that I like to read and listen to are, and I put names
absolutely,
like Rick Warren, Tim Keller, Craig Rochelle, whoever it might be, and just throwing big names out there. They probably all don't belong in the same conversation. Maybe they do. But so people that likely AI can find examples of online, and that's going to shape the kinds of content that comes back. Would that be a good use there?
100% right. Yeah. Any context that you can give it that will sort of direct its capabilities. It's almost like adding filters to its knowledge, right? You've got an AI model that's been trained on billions and billions and billions of data points, right? And so by giving it more context in these instructions, you're essentially adding filters to the AI model's generative capabilities so that it funnels in the right information.
Now, this is where copyright might start to come in. So let's say it finds some illustrations from all of its searching, everything that's available publicly out there. Do you need to go and check the sources, or can you provide the sources of where you found this information in case you're deciding to do something with it more than use it in a Bible study or preaching? But if you're going to actually write material that you're publishing, you want to give credit. Ideally, what are the ways that we can make sure that we're checking our sources?
Well, this is the really tricky part, because one of the things that people aren't aware of is that AI is not like a Google search. So when it produces something, it's not pulling it, unless you're using a web search function, which some AI models do have. In most cases, what it's not doing is it's not looking through its index of where did I get this from, and it doesn't have that ability to reference it. Much like our human brains work, we are pulling from a vast amount of information that we have accumulated, and it's sort of piecing it all together without any reference to where it got it. So you might ask it for a reference. Where did you get this illustration from? Or where did you get this analogy from? And it might tell you something, but in many cases, it's probably just hallucinating. It's making it up entirely, because that's just not how it's built to work. But if you have, like I said, a web search capability where it did perform a web search in its research for what it came up with, then it could probably, rightfully, correctly identify where it got that information from. So one of the things that I would always caution, again, use your critical thinking and fact check whenever it gives you facts. I use this a lot. I actually use this Bible scholar persona when I'm in Bible studies. And as we're going, I might say, what's the Hebrew root of this word in James chapter 2, verse 8, and it'll give me great information. But oftentimes, what I'll do is I'll go and I'll just double check, do a quick Google search, double check for that word. Now, most times it's spot on. It's not making that stuff up, but always good to double check, right? Especially when it comes to factual information.
All right. What are some of the other ways that you say AI capable of helping us maybe with administrative tasks in the church? You said it's a great tool for amplifying, helping us do what we do better and faster. What are some examples that you could foresee every church today starting to implement, and it'd be a huge win?
Yeah, so one interesting use case that I actually got from one of the pastors in my local church here. I was doing a session with him, teaching him how to use Magai for stuff. And he had this idea of, what if I could add all of our volunteer list into the AI model, and I could also upload sort of a list of events and times and so forth, and say, here's all our volunteers, here's all our events and service times, and we need to schedule all these volunteers equally across all these different times and dates. And he was able to successfully have the AI do it just by uploading the list of volunteers, uploading the date of events, and it created a whole calendar and it scheduled all the people at all the necessary times in an equal amount. Now, when someone had a conflict, all he had to do was say, well, Sherry has a conflict on this date. Can you move her around and replace her with someone else? And it did. It's really good at these sort of high-level data tasks where it needs to organize the data that you've given it. And I don't know about you, Phil, but I'm not a big data guy. Like, I don't love sitting there in spreadsheets and scheduling things like that. That's not the most fun stuff for me to do. So having an AI that I can just feed it all the chaotic information and have it organize that information, super helpful, super helpful. Things like you mentioned that earlier. I've been telling, as a marketing consultant, I've been telling churches for, it feels like a decade, that every Sunday sermon should be turned into a blog post and then shared across social media in bite-sized snippets. But this is a time-intensive task, right? So, it's really great for a communications person or social media person to take the transcript from the Sunday sermon and have the AI have the transcript and say, turn this transcript into a blog post, a structured blog post, or turn this transcript into, 5 Instagram updates and give me ideas for what the visual should be. And one of the things that I built into Magi from day one was the ability to take a YouTube link and automatically pull in the transcript. So a lot of these churches, they broadcast their sermon on YouTube Live on Sundays. And so YouTube creates the transcript already. So all you have to do is paste in the YouTube link to Magi and it will automatically know, oh, this is a YouTube video. I need to grab that transcript and bring it over here. And then you can do whatever you want with it. And there's great tools like Descript that are fantastic at, getting the transcript and then doing really cool things with it. So there's really a lot. I mean, once you start to really explore what are the tasks that I do on a day-to-day, and could the AI model make this faster?
It's funny because I'm known as an ideator. So that's one of those things that I like to hold on to, is like my superpower. And I didn't like it a month ago when I was sitting down with the CEO I work for, and he pulls out ChatGPT and starts having this brainstorm session. I'm like, wait, that's what I do. And I look at the list and it was pretty much stuff that I had said. But what was cool was how fast it did it.
Yes.
And it opened up possibilities. So I was telling you before we went live that this morning I did something similar. I came up with 100 ideas in 90 minutes. But what was cool is the way that it categorized them, which my brain would never have done. It would have just been a list of random ideas. I said, I need you to create buckets so I can see where the gaps are in what we've created. And for the most part, it got it really good. I split some stuff apart and realized, oh, we're missing this and we're missing this. By the time I was done, I was like, man, this is so powerful. It would have taken me at least a day, probably 2 days, to do what we did in 90 minutes. So I think that's one of the benefits that I'm seeing, is like it's taking what I'm already good at and making me even better at it.
And those are the people who thrive the most. The people who use it as a supplement to their current skills, they get the most benefit out of it. Now, I'm also a creative. You might know this about me. But I use it for that same thing. And the thing I've been trying to save creative people from for years is burnout. I've written articles about how to not get burnt out. I've got techniques and little things that I do to maintain my creativity throughout the day and not get burnt out. There was one point where I was managing, in my social media manager days, I was managing something like 30 different brands' content, overseeing a team of people who were writing content. And I had to myself not just produce content, but also audit and edit content. My creativity was so burnt out and stretched thin that at one point, I just couldn't think of a new idea. And I don't think any creative wants to be in that place where you've got writer's block or designer's block, and you just feel burnt out. And the thing that you love doing, creating, is no longer fun. That's what I think AI's greatest capability is coming alongside us and saying, hey, don't burn yourself out. Let's lean on this little tool that's going to assist you in being creative as well. And the results that I've come up with, by using AI to assist in ideation or to assist in coming up with different examples has just allowed me to open up so many more doors and sustain my creative energy throughout the days and weeks. I've even created GPTs or personas that are specifically about coming up with ideas. Like one of the token entrepreneur things is like we have an addiction to buying domain names, and nothing admits that more than the fact that I created a domain name generator persona. Whenever I have an idea, I throw it into the domain name generator persona and get some ideas for a new domain name. But,
oh, that's hilarious. Another application that I've been using recently, the Chat GPT app allows you to have conversations with it. I don't think you got this in Magi yet.
No.
But what I've done is I'd go for a walk. And so I put my headphones on, and I turn that feature on, and I say, hey, I want to talk to you about this. And a couple of these times I didn't even know where I wanted to go with this particular idea. So I said, I want you to interview me and ask me questions to help me flesh this idea out. This is the problem I'm trying to solve. This is what's going on. And by the end of a 30-minute walk, I've got a plan. I go copy it, paste it into a Google Doc, refine it, and then I start working on it. And
that's great.
And the creativity's been unlocked, and I finally can see a path forward. Like I did that with a business plan recently that I didn't know what to do with this business plan. How should I price it? What should it be? And all of a sudden, by the end of this walk, I'm like, oh, that's what I should do. So
yeah,
it's really pretty powerful if you know how to talk to it. So let's talk about that. What are some things that you've learned that you would recommend those who are just getting started, or those who maybe have been doing it for a while? What are some things that they could learn about how to best talk to the tools? And if you want to get into the nuances of the tools, you can, but let's start with generic, and then we can get into some of the superpowers of the different tools that are out there.
Yeah, the first thing I encourage anybody to do is speak to AI like you would a normal person. The whole unlock that the generative AI, the big value that ChatGPT was for the AI world was the conversational nature of the product. So the product was designed in a way that we were familiar with. Before ChatGPT hit the scene, there were plenty of AI tools, right? We've used the copy AIs, the Jaspers, all the copywriting AI tools out there. They were all predicated on templates. You search this giant library of thousands of templates, and you find the one that matches your given task, and hopefully you fill out a form, and it gives you something that you're looking for. The real unlock here was you didn't have to search for templates. You didn't have to go through like somebody else's idea of how to solve a problem. All you had to do was just state what you wanted, and the AI responded to you in natural language. And this was huge. And so like the first thing you need to know is just talk to it like a person. Many people are trying to talk to it like a Google search. And that's not, I mean, that's how we've trained ourselves to interact with computers over the last 20 plus years. We've treated them like Google search, give me this. And we're using keywords. We're not using natural language. We're not using full sentence structure. But with AI, we can just speak to it like a person, and it speaks back to us like a person. That is first and foremost. Now, there are ways to sort of get more out of it, or help it to give you more than you actually know to ask it for. Because one of the things we were talking before this is one of the things that I think is fascinating is our greatest advantage over AI is our experiences. AI will never have our combination of unique experiences and our unique perspective on the world. And that is our greatest value. And I think that's one reason AI will never replace us, because it will never have our unique combination of values, experiences, and perspectives on the world. But that's also our greatest limitation. We are limited by the amount of information we've consumed, the people who raised us, the environment we were raised in, the culture we were raised in, whereas AI doesn't have those limitations. So we can use AI to come up with stuff that we would have never come up with in the first place. And I love what you said, Phil. You said that you had the AI interview you. Mm-hmm. And this is one trick that I always tell people to do when you set out to accomplish a task with AI. Start by saying, here's what I want you to do for me. Ask me all the questions you need me to answer in order to do that for me. And give it no more guidance than that. Just tell it, ask me the questions you need answered in order to accomplish this task. And it'll ask you questions. And many times it'll ask you questions that you're like, oh, I would have never thought of that. Big unlock for me. And I think it's like the one simple hack that gets you exponentially more use out of these models.
And maybe one thing to add to that is I want you to act as a business coach or a pastoral coach or as a church administration expert or whatever category you want it to be if you're not, already in. And then I want you to interview me and ask the questions one at a time. That to me has been like
that's what I do too.
Powerful thing, because if you don't say that, it's going to ask you 7 or 8 questions, and by the time it's done, you don't remember what the first question was. And it learns. Sometimes by answering the first questions, you actually end up answering 3 or 4 of the questions it was going to ask you, and then it comes back with new questions. And then
better questions.
There's another unlock, which is, what haven't I already told you that I should be asking or I should be telling you? Some variation of that, I think, is a really great question, which, I do it whenever I'm working on projects or working with somebody. It's like, what don't I know to ask you about? What have you seen? What mistakes have you seen people make or whatever? Some variation of that. What else would you say?
Yeah. What are we forgetting here? What are we leaving out?
Yeah.
That's also a good idea. Yeah. Telling it to take on a role, again, that goes back to our GPTs or our personas. That's always best to do in the form of a persona or a GPT, because that system level instruction that it gets about its personality and how it interacts with you, that's its most important instruction. So it's got like a hierarchy of things that it needs to follow. If you don't tell it to be that church administrator or that Bible scholar or that copywriting expert, if you don't do that in the GPT instructions or in the persona instructions, it may not be as effective. So because it's going to have this generalized AI model that it's viewing the lens, like that's the lens it views your prompts through. So you want to put that first in the AI persona or GPT, then say, ask me all the questions you need me to ask me one at a time. And reinforcing what you said, when it does ask you one question at a time, the conversation evolves and becomes smarter. The AI becomes smarter as you give it, again, more and more context, which means it comes up with better questions or more direct questions or more laser focused questions. So always good to have that back and forth instead of doing, give me all this at once and then hopefully get an output all at once.
It's interesting. I was asking, as I was building this matrix of 100 ideas this morning, I had it take the ideas and put it into categories. And then I asked it, I want you to go through each column and I want you to bust those out and give me a description, a reason why someone would do this, and some potential sponsors who could fund this. And I asked it, can you do that all at once for the entire matrix, or do we need to break it down? And it came back and said, hey, we should probably do this one column at a time, which I thought was great. So we did. We worked through it one at a time. And then I, at one point, didn't tell it the name of the column. I just said, go to the next one. And it skipped a column. And so I went back and checked its work. It's like, oh, you skipped over this one. So even something as methodical as technology, it didn't go to the next one. It actually went to the last one. So that was kind of fascinating. I want to, first of all, before we go any further, I want to highlight the fact that Dustin is going to be speaking as part of a panel on AI for the church at the Modern Church Leader Conference. Justin and the team over at Tidely have this really cool offer, NYOP. That's not a new series on Netflix. That is Name Your Own Price. I used to not be funny, and I'm still not funny, but I try it sometimes anyway. So Name Your Own Price, literally, you can go there, name your own price. The Tidely team wants to see as many of us there as possible to have conversations like this. Like, this is something that, Dustin, I'm sure you'd be happy to take your phone out and show people exactly how it works, or take a laptop out and work through. And I know Julia McCoy is going to be there. And I think there's at least one other AI speaker who's going to be at the conference. And so I think this will be a very interesting topic of conversation. I want to talk to the pastors again. And sermon prep is a place that we all spend too much time. I literally had someone, I asked the question in the Facebook group for Modern Church Leader. I said, hey, what would you love to have taken off of your plate if you could delegate it? And the guy said, well, my sermons. And I said, well, is it the prep or the giving? And he said, well, both. And I said, well, interestingly enough, that's probably not too far away. But let's talk about the evaluation of sermons, because I think that's an interesting place to find out, like how engaging is your sermon? Where are there opportunities for improvement? Because AI is this neutral figure out there who you can ask and there's no emotional attachment, and it can roast your sermon. Like the trend right now on Instagram, you can ask ChatGPT to roast your Instagram account, which, by the way, quick aside, everyone should do that for their church, because it provides some really interesting insights of what AI sees that you're doing right and wrong. But it could do the same thing for a sermon, right, Dustin?
Absolutely. Yeah, if you can feed it that transcript, like we said before, it can absolutely break it down, summarize it, analyze it, and maybe tell you what's missing, what should be there, or even rewrite parts. One of the things that I don't feel like I'm the best at is analogies. And I think a lot of pastors, they do their best to try and relate the topic of the sermon to modern circumstances or modern situations and try to relate to modern people with these Bible stories. And I think one of the great things about AI is it's really good at coming up with analogies, at least for someone like me who's not very good at them. So having it come up with sermon illustrations, saying, here's our topic, here's where I want to go with it. What are some analogies, or what are some illustrations that I can present to my congregation so that they can relate to the subject matter better? One great use case of it. And even coming up with, like, what are some points that I might have missed in this sermon? How can I go deeper on this subject? One of the big peeves I have with churches is with their small group questions. And I would humbly ask anybody who has the daunting task of turning Sunday sermon into group questions, try using AI for coming up with discussion questions that cause deep conversations. Because I feel like it's a hard task, but if you put an AI to it, you can really stretch and come up with some really good conversation starters and sparks to get people talking deeper, not just, what did Jesus say here? Oh, he said this. How does that apply to our life?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Awkward silence ensues, and that's not what you want from a small group. You want deep conversations, and AI can definitely help in that capacity.
So is that the kind of words that you would use of help me come up with thought-provoking conversations or conversation starters that will lead toward a deep, thoughtful engagement around the content of this sermon? Or what kind of prompt would you?
Yeah, like absolutely. Just as if you were talking to somebody, again, going back to that idea that we're just talking to the AI as if it were human, as if it understood just the way that humans understand. Know what your objective is and just ask the AI to do it in as clear a way as possible. People who are good communicators are naturally good with AI. So all you really need to do is just articulate your needs or your outcomes and to ask the AI to perform that or to get to that outcome in the best way possible.
Back to the sermon evaluation. Is there a way that we can use AI to see what's getting engagement and what's not getting engagement? Is there some way to measure that, like combining YouTube feedback, or would we need to stick a camera up to monitor the room and, match that with the YouTube so that it could actually take that data and say, hey, when you told that story about your daughter, people were on the edge of their seat, they were crying. But then when you told that joke, they all are like checking out and looking at their watches. Yeah, I don't know. Is there some way that we could use AI for that?
apart from putting a camera on everybody and having like an AI Big Brother scenario, I don't know that there's a great way to do that. I mean, you could, in a sense, maybe from now, the challenge here is AI is not good at interpreting audio yet. You can feed it audio, but it is not great at the atmospheric sounds and that it might pick up on. So, if the audience is laughing in the background, it most likely won't pick up on that. So I don't think we're at a point yet where we can have it analyze stuff that's that complex and that nuanced. But if you had, say, social media analytics, engagement on different social media posts, you can have it analyze that data. So any way you can get raw, tangible data into the AI model, it can absolutely give you feedback about that. But yeah, unfortunately, it can't be Big Brother just yet.
Nope. Call Dustin. He'll sit out there and he'll tell you everything that you need.
Yeah, there you go.
Here's a great question, and that is, how can we ensure that we are maintaining authentic human connections while we're still leveraging AI? So what are some principles here? Because, it'd be really easy just to let AI do everything for us. Write the sermons, write the small group questions, write all the social media posts. Then all of a sudden that human element is missing and we're not seeing the people on the other side of the screen or out in the pew or whatever it might be. What are some thoughts that you have about that?
I think as long as you're following the basic principles that we talked about at the beginning, be critical about everything that comes out, and use your God-given skills and abilities to guide what the AI comes up with. I mean, the AI is never going to have your audience in mind. It's never going to have your perspectives or your theological beliefs in mind unless you preload it into the context.
Right.
So giving the AI that context of this is a small group for singles in their late 40s, right? Whatever your target audience is, it's your responsibility to feed that context into the model with your people, your intents, and your human connection in mind. And then once it's done, look at it critically as if your reputation was on the line. If you're going to put this out into the world, people are going to see it's coming from you. So make sure that it does represent you. For years, when I was working on a consultancy and working for clients, we had ghostwriters who would write blog posts for clients or write social media posts for clients. And even though the client themselves is not writing that content, the ghostwriters are. The ghostwriters have that client's voice in mind, that client's audience in mind. And before it gets published to their website or social media, that client's reviewing it. And they're putting their seal of approval on it, going, yeah, I read this and this is something I would say or approve of saying. So you need to have that same level of criticism and attention and intention with whatever the AI produces for you. It's your name on it, it's your reputation, and you need to review everything that comes up with, not just take it for granted and think, oh, I'm sure it's fine. Just send it out.
So unlike in our writing days where a ghostwriter is somebody that you could meet with, call, talk to, all those things, now we actually have a ghost called AI doing the ghostwriting.
It's a ghost in the machine.
It's a machine somewhere. You're not going to see it. But I love that analogy because we've had no problems using ghostwriters for a long time. Mm-hmm. Speech writers do it for political figures and others. So that's actually a big unlock even for me, because I literally turned in an article today that I used AI to probably write 80-90% of it. I was like, I'm a little bit guilty what I'm charging for it, but it's based on my knowledge. It's based on everything that I've done. I provided the direction and I still approved it at the end, refined it. So I love that.
I mean, business owners understand this concept, right? We are delegating our tasks to other people. And AI is just another thing that we're delegating to, right? If it's my job to fulfill, 1,000 orders for our chocolate bar company, it's not me who's going in and like making all the chocolate bars, right? I've hired a bunch of people to do it for me. But when those chocolate bars go out, if they're not good, that's on me. It's my job as the owner, the manager, So we have people who work under us as business owners. And that's how we need to think of AI. Like, even though it's doing the job, it's our job to make sure it's doing the job well. And then, the analogy of ghostwriters is most obvious for, once you understand that, it makes a lot of sense that you would, just be able to delegate it, but it's your reputation. So make sure it's good.
So I know many people in the Tidely audience work for small churches, small to
Mhm.
medium-sized churches, and my wife works for one of those. She's the children's director, and she's supposed to
Mhm.
work 20 hours and often is working 30 plus hours and even full time. And I think that's a normal scenario in small churches. And I think AI is one of those things that can really help in church plants and small churches where our teams are small, we're lean, we're trying to do too much. And it can help us do those things that are repetitive, those things that we know how to do. But if we could just take it off of our plate and not have to touch it as hard, it doesn't mean we're replacing jobs. It means we're making people better at the things they do so
Mhm.
that we can spend more time with people. I think in
Yes.
ministry, that's actually the big benefit here is like taking stuff off our plates that's keeping us in the office when we should be out having lunch and coffee and praying with people and counseling
Mhm.
and doing things, going seeing their kids play games, whatever it might be that AI can never do for us. What are your thoughts
Mhm.
there?
I think you're spot on. That's exactly how I view AI. I view it as a way of freeing me up or allowing me to do things in less time so that I can do the things that I actually love. I'm an extrovert. So sitting in front of a computer screen all day by myself in an empty house is not my idea of a good time. It actually makes me depressed if I'm here too long and don't interact with people. Like stuff like this gives me life. So thank you for this, Phil, and the Modern Church Leader
I'm here for
family.
you.
But so, like the analogy I've used before is, and you'll notice being in the social media space, for a long time in the social media world, scheduling tools were a topic of debate.
Mhm.
Is it inauthentic to
Mm.
schedule your social media posts ahead of time? Right nowadays, people are kind of over it, but back then it was a big deal. There were some people who had some very strong feelings like scheduling your content. Oh, that's like so impersonal. But the truth of the matter was, if I sit down for a block of time on a Monday for 30, 45 minutes and I schedule out an entire week's worth of content, I have the rest of that week to interact with people directly, authentically, and in person. And so, in that same way, people are kind of like, oh, you're using AI to do this and that. Like, oh, well, in reality, it's just allowing me to do the same work faster, more efficiently, so that I can go do more important work that AI can't do. I can build those human connections. And I can spend the time in pastoral care and don't have to worry about, all the the administrative stuff that just takes up so much time but doesn't really pay off the way that real human connections do.
Communications is one of your passions, and we both are familiar with, Justin Dean used to run that church conference, which was all about church communications, and that's a big part of this community here. We've
Mhm.
talked about social media and some of the things, but are there anything other ways that communications people could be using AI to make their jobs easier, more effective, whatever? What else should they be doing?
Yeah, strategy is one thing. So I'm a part of a couple different church communications groups, and again, I'm speaking to a bunch of church communicators next Thursday. So I'm getting all kinds of feedback from them. Like PR strategies and stuff that's more strategic and planning oriented. AI is really good at helping you come alongside you and helping you sort of craft those strategies. Even comm strategies, schedules for planning events, planning campaigns, mapping out big campaigns for whether it's a marketing campaign or a funding campaign, things that involve high level strategy, multi-step planning is one of the things that I think every church communicator should be using AI for. So those high level, strategic plans.
So I just launched a podcast 2 weeks ago, and I asked AI, I said, I want you to go look at the models of a couple people, John Lee Dumas and Pat Flynn, and a couple people who do podcasts. And I said, I want you to use their launch models and help me come up with an 8-week plan for launching my podcast. And it was
Mhm.
brilliant what it came back with. And I think that step was important where I said, use the expertise of these people as you help me build this plan. But I want you to do something for me, Dustin. Let's say that we've got an event at our church coming up in a month. how would you instruct AI to help you build a strategy, a communication strategy using email, in-person means, social media, etc.? How would you instruct it to help you build that? Because that's not intuitive to me the way you would think about getting AI to help you build a strategy.
So I'd start with prepping the AI. Hopefully I have in most cases, I would have had a workspace where it already knows the context of my church. It already knows the context of our congregation, maybe our geographic area. I would make sure that it already has the context of our church and community before I even ask it the first question. But then I would state it very simply, just like you did. I would say, we have an event on this date. The event is Merry Christmas Bakersfield. I'm just pulling from my, this is something our church does every year. Merry Christmas Bakersfield. We're going to have a bunch of vendors there who we have food trucks. We're going to have bounce houses. We're going to have this and that. I would describe the event and all the details of the event. And then I would end by saying, help me come up with a communication strategy that will help us to promote this event and get the word out as efficiently as possible in the number of days that we have it. Give me also a timeline of events on how I should promote this and when I should promote this and on what mediums. And I would kind of just start there off the top of my head and see what it comes up with from there. And this just kind of massage it until it, comes up with that full communications plan. And in most cases, it'll come up with a whole lot of stuff, and you can just kind of trim it and cater it to your specific needs.
So in other words, get the conversation started by providing the context and tell it what the outcome is, and then let it lead you by what it provides, and you're interacting with it from that point forward. It's not going to give you your plan the first iteration.
Right. Yeah.
Conversation.
Yeah. The most important thing is load it up with as many details as you can about the event and about your community, because that'll help guide, the outputs. And then I'd use our old tricks of like, what other information do you need in order to create a communication strategy for me? Ask me each question one at a time until you have all the information you need. Then let's build that comm strategy.
And I think if you've got materials already written, so Merry Christmas Bakersfield, if you've got, hey, this is what we did last year, here's a description of what it is. So if you've got things like that already, you can upload it and it will read that, and that's going to speed the process up, it seems like.
Yeah. Here's another thing you can do too. I've done this with ad campaigns. You can say, I have X amount of budget to put into our communications and our advertising. How can I allocate this budget effectively across the different channels that we could use?
And does it know where it's more likely to be effective, or how does it?
In my experience, it's done a pretty good job. Now, I'm not a paid ads kind of guy. That's always been my Achilles heel. I'm an organic content guy. So when it did make suggestions, it put, for our particular campaign, it was only digital marketing, and it had us put most of our budget into Facebook ads, which historically for me are not great. So I wasn't a big fan of that. But in the other areas, we did like influencer outreach. It effectively categorized the different channels that we should use for our ad spend, and helped me to sort of break it down and start mapping out from there, even though I was not a big fan of how much it gave to the Facebook ad campaign comparatively.
And again, what you just described probably produced some unlocks if you had done this, because I'm just thinking like those vendors that you talked about. What's the reciprocal things that can be done with these vendors that are showing up to this event? We show them love, they're going to show us love back. Probably would not have thought about that if you hadn't brought that up in AI, because you're thinking about, well, here's what we're doing. But AI is looking at it much more holistically. I was telling you about the event that I'm designing right now, and I gave it these 100 ideas. And one of the questions was, who should be the sponsors? Well, it started thinking about sponsors I never would have thought of, because they're not even on my radar. Like companies, I don't know who they are, but if they're an expert in this particular thing, well, yeah, it makes sense that you would approach them. So I love the different kinds of things that this is going to unlock. We could brainstorm this all day long here. Dustin, I'd love for you to just give a moment about Magai, your company, and like what's involved with that. It's magi.co. What is Magi? What's so powerful about what you've built?
Yeah, so Magi, I created it because I realized that there was going to be a lot of different AI tools out there. You've got the open AIs and the Anthropics and the Googles of the world all fighting to be the best AI. And I didn't want to be limited by any one. And there were a lot of limitations of ChatGPT when it first came out. And so I built Magi to really be the all-in-one AI platform. You have one subscription and you get all the AI things. You get access to ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Meta AI. You get image generators such as Flux or DALL-E or Leonardo AI. Basically, all of the AI things that you could possibly need under one subscription in one interface where you can use them in tandem with one another. So that's what Magi is. It really is a passion project because it's one of those things where I loved this new world that AI was creating, and I loved what ChatGPT was unlocking, but it was missing so many things that I just really built Magi to solve my own problems, and it did. And I realized, a lot of other people felt that way too, and it solved their problems as well.
Yeah, I'm a subscriber, and I love having all those different tools because there's the right tool for different kinds of things. Let's just give a quick topography just within the chat-based things, not the visual stuff. Claude is good at what? Just kind of give us a quick summary of what's each one of them really good at.
Well, right now, Claude 3.5 Sonnet in particular seems to be the best human-like language in its output. It really has just this humanized quality to it that is unmatched in the industry. It also has the highest context when it comes to how much memory it can remember. Claude, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, 200,000 tokens, which is approximately like 160,000 words it can remember. That's novels upon novels worth of words that it can remember in a conversation. Whereas OpenAI's GPT-4 only has about 128,000 tokens, so its memory is a little bit lower. But I mentioned it earlier, the difference between Claude and GPT are typically the creative capacity. GPT's creativity is turned up to 11. Like, it's super creative, it's super capable, but that also lends it to hallucinations a little bit more than Claude will. Anthropic, Claude's parent company, they are much more obsessed with safety and accuracy than I would say OpenAI is. OpenAI currently has a big problem around the safety team. A lot of people continue to quit because of their safety policies. So OpenAI versus Claude in particular, OpenAIs tend to be a little more creative. Claude tends to be a little less creative, but more accurate and more reliable and a little more human sounding. Now, Gemini, I'm also a big fan of Gemini because Gemini in particular is really good at structured output, such as blog posts. So if you have, you want to create an ebook or a long form piece of blog content, anything that's long form and structured, I found Gemini to be exceptionally good at. Specifically blog posts. Meta, it's okay. Meta's Llama model is pretty okay. Now, the benefit of, say, a Gemini or a Llama over Anthropic or OpenAI and Anthropic are both what we call moderated models, which means they have certain topics that they will not talk about or interact with. Sometimes, particularly churches, will butt up against that because it doesn't like, specifically Claude, a lot of times does not like to talk about religious matters, and it will refuse to comment on them. So you might need to switch over to, say, a Gemini, which doesn't have those limitations. It is an unmoderated model.
Which one would you say is best at analyzing data?
I would say best analysis capabilities probably goes to GPT-4o.
Okay. All right.
Although Claude's not bad at it, it's just I would probably say GPT-4o is a little bit better at it.
And if you're watching this in 2025, all these answers will be bogus because it will have changed 5
all
times.
These answers would be wrong 2 weeks from now. So
it's probably true tomorrow. All right. Well, one more time, thank you, Dustin, for being here. Folks, if you are going to be at the Modern Church Leader Conference, please look Dustin up. He would love to talk to you, I am certain. And Julia will be there. I would love to see you. If you don't have your ticket yet, you can literally name your own price. Just go to that URL right there, NYOP, name your own price, and you can literally type in what you can afford. And we would love to see you there. There's space for you. It's going to be a great time. I think 45 different speakers, including yours truly. So I'm excited to be part of it and can't wait to see you there, Dustin. It's been a while.
Yeah, likewise. I'm excited about it.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you next week for another conversation about marketing and the church with Mark McDonald. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.